Welcome to Nexus Medical Media. In this video, we're going to talk about muscles of the tongue. Right, the tongue is a very complex organ, actually. Right, so we have a separate video talking about physiology, talking about the papillae you find, the reception of pain, taste, etc. But in this video, we are going to focus on the muscles. Right, so here you can see this is the tongue. Right, so the tongue has two groups of muscles, the extrinsic muscles and the intrinsic muscles. Let's start with the extrinsic muscles. All right, so here you can see that like the names, they tell you where this muscle is attaching to. For example, the palatoglossus, it attached from the palate to the tongue. The tongue is the glossus, right? Here you have the genioglossus. You remember inside the, like in this angle of the mandible, you find the genius, right? So from that point, it's called the genioglossus. You can see here from the hyoid bone, you have the hyoglossus, and from the styloid process of the temporal bone, you find the styloglossus, right? From the styloid process of the temporal bone, you find the styloglossus, right? Okay, so let's go through different features, meaning origin, insertion, innervation, and function, right? Starting with the palatoglossus. The origin is palatine aponeurosis. That's the aponeurosis of the soft palate. That's the origin of the palatoglossus. Insertion is posterolateral sides of the tongue. Innervation is firstly by the vagus nerve via the pharyngeal plexus. Vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. And the function of palatoglossus is elevation of the back of the tongue, depression of the soft palate. Palatoglossus, depression of the soft palate and elevation of the back of the tongue. Next one is the genioglossus, right? Origin is the mandible in the genial tubercle. Insertion, that's body of hyoid bone and the inferior surface of the tongue. Innervation, right? So all these muscles are innervated by the 12th pair of cranial nerve, that's hypoglossal nerve or hypoglossal nerve, right? So for genioglossus is protrusion and depression of the tongue. Hyoglossus. Hyoglossus origin is hyoid bone, particularly the greater horn and the body, the corpus of the hyoid bone. Insertion, lateral and inferior surface of the tongue, right, is lateral to genioglossus and the medial to the styloglossus. Innervation, I told you, is the 12th cranial nerve, and the function is retraction and depression of the tongue. And last but not least, we have the styloglossus, right? So styloglossus origin is temporal bone, particularly the styloid process. Insertion is lateral and inferior surface of the tongue. Innervation, again, 12th pair of cranial nerve, and cranial nerve number 12. And the function is elevation of the sides of the tongue to facilitate swallowing. Another function is retraction of the tongue, right? So the four extrinsic muscles of the tongue: palatoglossus, genioglossus, hyoglossus, and styloglossus, right? So here again you have them: the palatoglossus, genioglossus, hyoglossus, styloglossus, right? So this is a clinical application. You need to remember that the genioglossus normally protrudes the tongue evenly in the midline, but if there is unilateral hypoglossal damage, the tongue will deviate towards the side of the damage, to the same side, right? So to remember this, there is a mnemonic, right? The gene, right? The gene propels out of the tongue. For the genioglossus, protrudes the tongue, right? That's the function, right? I will remind you later, right? For now, let's talk about the intrinsic muscles, right? So the intrinsic muscles are here. Right, so I will just go through them and then I will show you different organization functions and then back again, right? So you can see here, you can see the superior longitudinal muscle, vertical muscle, inferior longitudinal muscle indicated here, and here is the genioglossus muscle, right? This one is an extrinsic muscle. And also for orientation, you can see the mylohyoid muscle and the geniohyoid muscle, right? We'll talk about the muscles of the hyoid bone later, together with the hyoid bone, right? So let's talk about the origin, insertion, and innervation of the intrinsic muscles of the tongue, right? So the superior longitudinal muscle. Origin is the median fibrous septum close to the epiglottis. Superior longitudinal muscle. Median fibrous septum close to the epiglottis. Insertion is lateral edges of the tongue. Innervation, all of them, is the 12th pair. That's hypoglossal nerve. The function of the superior and inferior longitudinal muscles is retraction of the tongue, making it short and thick. Making it short and thick, superior and inferior. All right, so that's the inferior. But the inferior originates from the root of the tongue. The insertion is the apex of the tongue, right? Innervation, hypoglossal, right? And the function is same. It makes the tongue short and thick. Next is the vertical muscle. The vertical muscle, the origin is dorsum of the tongue, the submucosal fibrous layer. Insertion is the anterior borders of the tongue. Innervation, hypoglossal nerve. And the function is flattening and broadening of the tongue. Last but not least, there is transverse muscle of the tongue. Origin is median fibrous septum. So together with the superior longitudinal, you can see this, right? Median fibrous septum. These two originate at the same point. And insertion, same thing, lateral edges of the tongue. But on the functions, the transverse muscles of the tongue narrows and elongates the tongue. Narrows and elongates the tongue. So it's more like opposite. This one, it makes the tongue short, the superior longitudinal muscle. And the transverse muscle, it makes it long and narrow, right? Okay, so one more time, let me show you these muscles. The superior longitudinal muscle, the vertical muscle, the inferior longitudinal muscle. All right, and there was another one. Okay, let's see. Vertical, transverse, superior and inferior. All right, so superior and inferior. Vertical, so the transverse will be somewhere around where? Here. Okay. All right, so this is another image. It's really good, showing you the position of the tongue. Like, so this is the hyoid bone. You can see connection. This muscle between the tongue and the hyoid bone is called the hyoglossus, right? So you can see the palatopharyngeal. This one is actually the palatopharyngeal muscle, and this one is palatoglossus. In between, you find a fossa for the tonsils, the palatine tonsil. Here you can see the uvula, right? This is soft palate. And if you look here, you see the pterygoid humulus, like this. It's like a hook on the pterygoid process of the... Which bone has a pterygoid process? It's sphenoid, right? Okay, here you can see the eustachian tubes. The eustachian tubes is like connection of the pharynx and the middle ear, right? Here you can see the levator veli palatine, tensor veli palatine. Okay. All right, so this is the clinical significance. One more time, clinical significance. The hypoglossal nerve lesion, right? So the tongue of this patient shows a deviation to the left side when asked to stick out the tongue. And this finding is typical of a left hypoglossal nerve lesion, right? So you can see it's same side, right? So there is a left-sided lesion and there is a left-sided deviation, like this. Thank you so much. I hope this video was helpful. And if that is the case, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section, share with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any of my latest videos. Thank you so much.